Oh my god, that was such a fun one, was it not?
So one thing random that is awesome that this is this crazy world, but as soon as he said Wakanda, oh my god, it's like in the Marvel universe now. It makes sense. These burgers in the Marvel universe, man. It's crazy.
That's so true. All we needed right now was like for some superhero to come out, and like the fact that Snoop Dogg's in there is just like, or like just Snoop in general. Like it's the funniest thing. We love that's actually one of our newest scripts, as well as another one that we have called Absolute 45 Minutes. But that one's way too long. We wouldn't have been able to finish it. But this one is such a good amount of time. The script is so well done because it starts off in like a regular day, and then like all hell breaks loose, and it's just so well done. It was a well written script for sure. I really digged it.
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah. So,
lots of energy in there, right?
Yeah, definitely. So let me tell you. Let me ask. What was your favorite script of the night?
My favorite script of the night. I think the devil one for sure. Devil and angel. I just like being a little demonic meanie. That's fun.
Oh yeah, your voice was perfect. You're like, it was good. I really enjoyed it, and the cool thing is that what people do in these script reads, and what's so cool about this is that you get to do a different voice. So we get to hear you do all of these different voices and all of these different characters in a matter of really an hour, because that's how long our script reads are. An hour. And it's so cool to be able to be so many characters at the same time. So I guess we can start off by like how is it that you started creating all of these characters? Like how did you just come out thinking, I'm going to do voice acting and I'm just going to start off with all of these different characters in my head? How did that happen?
Yeah, so one thing that I think is interesting is like so if I was to evaluate myself critically, and now that I'm talking, you're going to see I'm a little bit of an analytical person. So my voice, as it's currently trained, because I've only been doing it for a limited amount of time, it doesn't have a huge range in comparison to more experienced voice actors. But and just in general, I sort of have this tight, sort of like gravelly sounding throat. It's just how I speak naturally. So to me, characters, it's all about acting, right? It's like you can use the same voice and create different characters. And that's something that a director that I work with that really respects has, hammered down my throat. It's like I'm coming into an audition, I'm like, oh, sweet. I'm going to come up with this crazy voice to go in the audition. It's like, no, don't do that. Focus completely on the character, as in like, how to act in that scene. And then the voice will just come out of it, I think. It's more about attitude than anything else, in my opinion.
Right, and this is a good question to piggyback on. Greg Goober, that we had just finished going ahead and working with him in one of the scripts, he asked, Nathan, do you have any advice on portraying emotion? And right now you were talking about getting into character, so if you could get a little bit more into that, how do you really work onto a script and portray that emotion that they're asking you for?
Yeah, that's definitely a challenge, and I think that the key thing that I would say, one is you have to get physical with it. So, and you might notice sometimes during the script read, I'd accidentally slap my leg because I was like into it, and I'm like, no, don't slap, never. That's really bad. Don't slap. but definitely you want to get physically into it. So when you're sad, hold your body sort of loose and weak. When you're angry, tighten your muscles up. It'll physically change your voice. So I think lots of it is physical. In terms of actually getting into, like, preparing myself for this stuff. So most of my work, you don't see the script till you're there, right? Yeah. So there's no prep work. It's like, here's the script. You're voicing Anishi today. And so you just got to go into it. And it's like, all of a sudden you're like, okay, you're on an emotional line. So you go emotional, and then you let the director sort of push and pull you. And when you're recording your own stuff, it's really important to to make sure that you can direct yourself well, and that you, because we all record our stuff and we're like, oh my god, I'm the most amazing voice actor in the world.
Yeah,
I got mad skills.
I agree.
And so to be able to, yeah, because we're all the most amazing voice actors in the
Yeah.
world. But yeah, how to like sort of step back and sort of analyze yourself critically, I think is a really important
Right.
skill. And one other thing I will say that I personally think is important, I know lots of us won't have ideal setups for this, and this is the reality of, when you're voicing at home. I think it's very important to stand. You won't have a studio where you're doing voiceover where you're sitting. So why are we sitting at home?
I
If you
completely
sit,
agree.
it physically constrains your body, right?
Yeah, it does. It stoops your breathing too. I'm standing right now as we're talking in this one too. I usually stand most of the time too because it just helps breathing so much better.
Totally. It's a huge difference.
Oh yeah.
It's like I've taken lots of classes on sort of the physiology of the body and how it impacts voice. And it's amazing how like the subtlest change, like how a tight jaw can constrict the soft palate so you can't do lighter voices, or like how I realize that I always speak through my voice rather than speak through my lips like this. Like it's a subtle difference, but over time it makes a very significant difference.
Yeah, definitely. Wow, that's a good one. That's a good one for everybody listening. And let's go ahead. Wow, we're getting a lot of questions now. Actually, I have someone who seems like they know a lot of where your shows have been. So one of our members, Blue, is asking, what was it like voicing in shows such as Kisniver, Gintama, and World Trigger?
Sweet. So in those shows, so that was basically in Chinook Animation in Calgary, and I actually had limited roles in each of those shows. So let me see. World Trigger, I was direct cast as sort of a character that just exists for 3 episodes, and that was interesting. So like, come on, we have a character for you. You've been direct cast. I come here, and it's like, all right, this is the character I want you to go. So that, I think my involvement with that series was literally like an hour and a half of recording to get my 2 or 3 episodes, and they just said do my natural voice. So that was what it is. For you, it sounds like you're looking at my IMDb because this is where I list this stuff.
Kisniver.
So
Let's start with that one. Kisniver.
Yeah. So with Kisniver and actually Gintama, these are very similar things. They're actually shows that I did a lot of a lot of background work in. I've actually been in quite a few more shows than you'll see on my IMDb in terms of background sort of walla work. But if you ever see me list a show, it basically means I've been in that show for at least 6 episodes doing background work. So Kisniver was background work, so that was, other than the student that I was, which was just, hey, I'm just a student, so it was a quick incidental. But background work, stuff like, what's happening in the mall, lots of people, lots of voice actors talking together and then layering over multiple passes. Gintama, similar thing, although I did have a reoccurring character like this bully kid who's just a dick, who basically was in a few episodes. But I like being the dickhead characters. It's fun.
Yeah, no,
and
they are fun.
I have one amazing story about Gintama. Can I share this story?
Of course, you can share whatever you want here.
So this is my favorite thing to ever do walla on. And so whenever I say walla is the background stuff. And I love walla. Lots of voice actors don't like walla, but I find that walla is the perfect time to work different characters into the background. Right. So like, you have to do 5 takes of the same thing. Every take has to be different. Every take has to have a subtle, well, maybe not every take needs a different voice, but the text has to be, or the words have to be completely different. But I like to mix up the voices, so that's where I practice my range. Nice. But there was this one with Gintama, and this is how PG is this place again?
We can, I wouldn't want to say too many bad words. As long as you don't say the F word, we're good. No F-bombs. Okay,
this is sort of because Gintama is a little bit mature, so there's some sexual themes, and there's this one show where I was a background character that was dressed as a sexual pleasuring device, and I had to express complete sorrow and complete sexual satisfaction simultaneously.
Wow.
And that was like, oh my god.
Yeah, you don't
Gintama, man, it was so
understand.
crazy, so much fun. So like, there's so much energy that went into that. Oh yeah, that's my favorite wall session ever.
And I think it's really cool that you talk about that because I don't feel like many people know that you don't have to be a lead or a supporting role. Even being able to be Walla is like you're still there. You still made it. You still got to a certain extent, right? I feel like sometimes people just try to put their goal as I want to be a main character, but sometimes it's starting off small and going big is all right too. And it's nice to have you speak about Walla because I don't think we've had any of our guests speak about that, about being, in the background, which is so much. It's so important because you can't just have, a scene where two people are talking and they're in the mall and then nobody else is talking, So
Yeah.
it doesn't seem real.
And I think they're totally.
Yeah.
And there's a big difference, in my opinion, between Walla that is like seriously done and Walla that is sort of thrown to the side. Like good Walla makes a huge difference. And it's the perfect time to practice. And like from my experience, I started in Walla, right? And that's generally how studios that I've worked with will do it. You'll get into the studio and they'll be like, all right, we want to try this person out. And so the best way to try them out is Walla, because if they aren't necessarily someone we want to keep with us, there's 3 other strong actors in the room with them.
Right.
To carry them through that session. But then if you perform and you give energy and you just stick to it, that's when you start building that relationship. They realize, wow, this is a good actor.
Yeah, and they bring you in for other things because now
Exactly.
and that's a great way to start. And that brings us also into networking and being able to try to give your best at all times, even if it's not perhaps a role that you wanted or you went for another. Because I've also talked to guests, and it's happened to me too, where I go for one role and then they don't give me that role, but they give me a lesser role, but it's still a role. And when you take in that, then maybe next time they'll be like, you were such a great trooper. Why don't we go ahead and bring you for another role and then another role? And it just continues on. It's like this networking, amazingness, magical experience happening. Am I right?
Networking, amazing, magical experience. Quote.
By Yenni
like
Ann.
it.
So let me go ahead and also Blue had another question too, and he asked how long you were doing voiceover. I know we had talked about that you had been doing it from 2014, but let's go ahead and travel a bit more because you were in acting beforehand, before 2014 as well, correct?
Yeah, so I was a drama nerd sort of growing up, so I did lots of improv and stuff like that.
Nice.
But this is literally in junior high and high school and stuff like that. And then when I went to university pursuing my other professional avenues, at that time I started doing some performance art courses. But I'm definitely not a formally trained actor. I've just had a love for it. And like I love public speaking and stuff like that. I've always enjoyed that. It's just something I feel, I don't know, I just like engaging with people, long story short.
Right.
I have lots of, it was always challenging for me. Like I decided not to go into acting because I didn't like how when you are a actor in person, I mean, like you get really famous, people sort of very much idolize you. And that makes me uncomfortable. Like I feel like,
Oh my
I want to be
gosh.
equal to everybody around me. You know what I mean?
I feel the exact same way. I totally get you. Yeah.
And so even though I do like have an agent and I do some acting and stuff like that on the side, first, I'm not a very good in-person actor, at least yet, especially on camera. I move too much. I'm like very high energy person.
Yeah.
But other than that, yeah, it's definitely not my passion. My passion is completely voice. And it's because, as a voice actor, if you listen to one of my characters, you don't think, wow, like you don't think Nathan Hunt is Anishi Satoru. You think, wow, that's Anishi Satoru who's voiced by Nathan Hunt. You know what I mean? And to me, that's a big separation for me. That's really important.
I feel like
So-
once you're able to make the character into, like, you bring the character to life. And I think that's the coolest thing about voice acting, that you're sort of in the behind the scenes. You're the one, you're creating this character, and people are looking up to this character. You know, there's a bunch of, like one of my favorite animes is Fairy Tail. I love Fairy Tail. Lucy Harfilia is my jam. And I looked up to her when I was younger. And also Raven and Starfire from Teen Titans was my thing too. Like, I loved all of these characters, but I never thought, until I got into voice acting, I never thought about who's really, you know, voicing them. Because I thought they were, you know, that's when you know that the voice actor did their job, I think. When the kids don't think about who's voicing them, they just think, oh my god, Starfire is real. You know what I mean? Like, this is going down. Who's Nathan Hunt? I just know his voice, you know? And it's a cool feeling, and I totally agree with you on the fame thing. Honestly, we've gotten mixed reviews in different guest nights. But what's your definition of being famous to you? Like, what do you feel? Do you have the need to be famous? I see that you say not really, and I'd like you to go into that, because a lot of people think fame is the ultimate goal, and it depends on the person, in my opinion. It really does.
Yeah, totally. Like, for me, the reason I got into got into voice acting is because I'm a huge anime nerd.
Yes.
I love anime, and I used to be like a sub snob. You know, oh, subs are the best.
Oh my god,
you knew so much with the English.
I was the same way. I was like, forget dubs, only subs, and then we became the dub people. So
exactly.
That kind of changed.
So a big thing for me, totally. Now I'm doing it. What have I done to myself? No. Yeah. So I ended up. I volunteer for a anime convention called Otafest. It's a Calgary anime convention.
Yeah, I
know. And I've been doing that for a while. Love that convention. And so I meet a lot of people that really like dubs. And to me, I was like, you know what? Some dubs were really super influential to me, like, you know, Dragon Ball Z, Sailor Moon. These are huge dubs for me.
Sailor Moon was like so well done. It was probably one of the best dubs that I've seen. And also, I really liked Gurren Lagann dubbed was pretty good.
Yeah.
I liked it. Yeah. Addicted.
And I really liked actually Sailor Moon is actually the reason actually the voice actress from Sailor Moon, the English voice actress, is the reason why I got into dubbing. Because
my gosh.
She was a guest at Otafest, and I talked to her one day, and this was after I had done this, like, welcome to Otafest, everybody, let's all be otaku buddies, yeah, like, for attendees. And I was talking to her just casually, and I said, you know, I've always been interested in this and stuff like that, but I had questions, and I felt like this industry is tough because, in my opinion, everyone is trying to sell you something, and that's the nature of this business, I suppose. But for me myself, because I am truly a part-time voice actor because of the city I live in, and I have a full-time gig, I don't really feel the need to necessarily do that. Like, I don't need to make my income by saying, hey, yeah, I'll tell you all the secrets, pay me $50 an hour and I'll give you some tips and stuff like that. Like, that is a valuable thing to do. I'm not speaking down about those people, but that's just not my business. So I found that for me, it was difficult to get into the industry because I felt like I wasn't getting sincere advice from people. I felt like I was just, you know, a money-making machine for lots of people. But Sailor Moon was the first person who took the time. I mean, Sailor Moon was the first person. It's amazing. It's Sailor Moon. Anyhow, so
no, I'm fangirling inside
so she
too.
gave me some tips and really helpful. Yeah, Sailor Moon, Moon Tiara Magic, man.
Yeah,
Moon Tiara Magic.
I loved her so much. Like, and she did like. I feel like she was such a like huge thing in the 90s, honestly. Like, just hearing her be like Darian, or just like, oh, you know, like all her like little different, like, oh, I loved her so much. I think she was probably one of the greats, honestly. She still is, but she was amazing, and that's such a nice story too. And I really do agree with you that marketing isn't for anybody, but it is something that is definitely used a lot in voice acting. And it's something that
Yeah.
as all our viewers and listeners and members here know, marketing is something that you need to do, because I mean, you need to get your demo reel, you need to talk to people, you need to network yourself out there, you gotta, you know, go find agents, have agents find you somehow. So it's a lot of work. But how you said that you do part-time, you do this part-time, you do something full-time, that's awesome, because a lot of us here are also in that same thing. I'm in that same thing. We have a few members that are also in a full-time job, part-time voice acting, because we gotta make money somehow. And actually, speaking about that, I'm totally gonna talk about it. You're a Muay Thai instructor. That's crazy. Crazy.
Yes, Muay Thai is the ultimate fighting style. Don't mess around with me, man.
Oh my god, that's so awesome. How long have you been doing that?
I've been training in Muay Thai so I'm 35. I think I've been training in Muay Thai for 18 years total.
Nice.
And give or take a few years. And it's been a little bit inconsistent. I've been teaching it probably for about 5 years or so. And I love Muay Thai. Muay Thai is life. That's how I would say it. I feel like one of the reasons I have such high energy in the studio, and I always I can come in, I can do 3-hour sessions, and I'm energy all the way through, is because of the cardio power of Muay Thai.
Right.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
And the people that don't know what Muay Thai is, it's a Thai kickboxing style.
Oh, there you go. There you go. So for anybody who wants to learn about Muay Thai and you live in New York, go somehow find Nathan. Go somehow. He's an instructor somewhere in NYC. So awesome. So let's keep on going with different questions, because I totally we go around everywhere. We do this all the time in every guest night, where we start talking about one thing and then go talking about 10 other things, and it's totally fine. So Quinny actually asked, she was the angel in the Angel and Demon script that you guys did. She asked, Nathan, what was your favorite role to voice act as?
Yeah, that's super easy, because I am still new to this. So Sakate Onigashira for sure, from Future Card Buddy Fight, because he is just a complete dickhead. And just laughing in people's faces, oh, you suck so much, that sort of character. And it's so much fun to be that type of character. One of my favorite characters growing up was Starscream. I love characters that are so cocky and always lose. Oh, that's just the best. It's so much fun. So yeah, he's one of those characters.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm pretty proud of my work with him. Yeah, it really was. He was a challenge, but it sort of, it just energy, is good energy playing that character.
Right. And the coolest thing, we were talking before about we were talking beforehand in regards to getting into character. A really cool thing is when you play these dicky roles, or this guy who's just really mean or something, when you're able to have people be I hate this character, you're yes, I did my job. I made you hate it. 'Cause that's the point. That's the point.
True story.
You can't play an ass and then just be a complete sweetheart, because it won't work out. You gotta play the role, and you gotta fit it right. And I think those are such fun roles. So I agree with you.
Totally.
That's a good one. That's
Yeah,
a really good one.
It's a perfect example of a role that I think was very well acted,
Tell me.
and people hated him. And people hated the series. And I mean, this is a controversial series, but I'm a huge fan of it. And so Gundam Seed Destiny, people hated Shin from the second season because he's whiny, full of hatred, pubescent little kid. And I'm totally I get that people hate him, but you're supposed to hate him. You're supposed to hate this whiny, irrational kid. And I love that. I love that series so much. It turns away so many people because they hate him, but he's an anti-hero. And sometimes, I don't know, you don't need to like everything about what you're watching, you know what I mean? Just because something gives you a feeling it gives that feeling doesn't mean it's bad. It means that's happening in you for a reason.
Right.
Unless, of course, it is actually bad. There's a difference. I don't know how to figure it out. I just have my personal opinion. You figure it out yourself.
Yeah, but no, you're definitely right. When you start feeling things, I think that's when a show really has captivated its audience. One of the shows that's I just started watching it and I absolutely love it, is Netflix's Voltron. Oh my god, it's like my new favorite show. And I started watching it and I get so many feelings, and I'm looking at this and I'm like, these are what you call voice actors. When you're able to get so into a show and like just start feeling like, you know, that every element that the show brings, that means that the voice actors are working so hard. And it's so cool. It's so cool that you
Totally.
mentioned that's one of your favorite actors, because it's a hard one. It's such a hard role to portray. It's not easy to be a mean person if you're always, you know, if you're like a good person. I kind of feel bad afterwards. Like every time I've had to play a villain, I feel bad afterwards. I'm like, but then I do yoga. So let's go ahead and keep asking
Yoga.
questions. Yeah, you do Muay Thai, I do yoga. Okay, so let me go to so the Jedi Exile. We also worked with her. She asked, how did you break into voiceover? So probably like the best way to answer this, ask this is, what was the first big role you had?
So the first big role was Anishi Satoru from Cardfight Vanguard.
Okay.
And so really what happened, so you know that like, yeah, Sailor Moon's what got me into it. Once Sailor Moon got me into it, I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to start doing some training. So I actually went and took formal training, because to me, voiceover and the techniques and everything you use is not natural. Like acting to me, even though I love it, it is not a natural skill that I have. Like I can be charismatic naturally, people like me naturally, but like actually acting to me is not a natural skill. So I went and trained. That was really, really important for me, and training's very, very important for me. So I did that. I finished some courses, took about a year to do that. I mean, these were just like small courses, but they were spread out across the year.
Right.
And after that, did a general audition, got brought into a play, started doing background work, and then eventually I was direct cast as this character named Anishi Satoru. And that was amazing, because Anishi Satoru was a character that I didn't know how big they were going to be, but they turned out to be in over 3 seasons of this series. And what was great is when I was cast, you know, they really took a chance on me, 100%, and they gave me the time to build my skills. So if you listen to my first Anishi Satoru stuff, it is like, oh man, in my opinion, it's not very good. But I've grown so much because the studio was very patient with me and saw potential in me. So that's
awesome.
like, I thank them so much for that.
Yeah, and you know, talking about like how Anishi first started and how it was towards the end, I feel like every voice, you never stop learning, and your voice never stops kind of like finding new ways to come out. You know what I mean? Like it's a constant learning. It's constantly learning, and a lot of our members wonder, you know, where do I start? Where do I start? And you giving the answer to really working on just learning, that's a really good place. I mean, did you learn with specifically like someone? Did you have a mentor, or did you just do courses online? How did this work? Because this is something that's a pretty well talked about topic, especially now. Casting Call Club is actually doing their first round of voice acting classes called Voice Acting 101, and it's all gonna go all the way to Voice Acting 401. So it's 4 courses. And we were just talking about it, like what was your first class, and how do you usually do workshops, courses? How does it work for you?
So I started out with just classes. So I did this. There's this where I live. There's this place, this provider called TuneVox, and they basically gave me some intro courses, which was really, really good. And I took 3 courses through them. Then I started doing online stuff, which is great. Knowledge is great, but knowledge is not practice, and practice is what you need.
Right.
And you need to be really analytical with your practice. You need to be able to take criticism. That's the biggest thing as a voice-over artist or as an actor in any sort. You need to be able to take criticism and check your ego at the door, because the very nature of the business is to take criticism so you can get a good take. That's just how it works. So I did some academic training. So I basically took some university level courses that were focused on voice. Just a few of those. seminars whenever I could, and practice really, and
Nice.
ongoing. So like, for example, that when I was talking sort of about the voice stuff, like the course on the vocal studying, how different how different how different sort of voices will come out of different physicalities. um, I started taking this weekly class with this person in Calgary called Jane McFarlane, who's a pretty well-known sort of stage director and also really focused on voice here. And so like I literally consider it like voice yoga. So it's
Oh.
like once a week I'd go to voice yoga for 2 hours of just like doing weird stuff with your body and your voice, but you would come out and you would like have freedom in your voice.
Nice.
And so like before this session today, for example, before every session, I will do a vocal warm up. So I do specific stretches for it that I know work really well for me. And that really brings the energy to the performance. So anyhow, I'm going all over the place.
No,
all
it's
over the
totally fine. It's totally fine. This is what I love about these types is that you just get to chill and talk, sip some water, talk a little bit, enjoy each other's company, and enjoy everybody who's listening to us out there. And I think I've already said this, but thank you so much for coming to this and being with us, dude. Totally awesome. We love.
I really appreciate like people actually having questions and wanting to hear. I think that's awesome.
And we still got more. So
oh yeah.
So
let's go all night.
So I don't know about that. We'll go for a little bit longer. So Jedi actually had another question for you, and that was, what would your dream role be? I love this question. This question's so nice.
My dream role. Oh man.
Would it be to voice
I have many
Muay Thai?
dream roles.
Would it be to voice a Muay Thai instructor?
No, that would be a fun joke role. That'd be like my daily life, voice a Muay Thai instructor. So yeah, I think that I base it on the series that I love. Like I really love Macross, for example, and so being in an official dub of that would be good. Being in a Gundam, I would love to be anything in a Gundam, like to be like Asaron from Gundam Seed or something like that. Asaron, I love that guy. To be Isaac from Isaac's voice actor. I mean, Japanese voice. I haven't heard the English for this one specifically, but Isaac's Japanese voice actor is so good. I'd love to do a role like that. I think those are the main ones. I'm drawing a blank right now, but it's always based on series that I like. Excluding one of my favorite series is Ghost in the Shell. I know, maybe I could be Togusa from Ghost in the Shell. Togusa would be fun, yeah.
Yeah, and
love Ghost in the Shell.
Speaking of which, you were talking about the voice actor from, I think he's Japanese, yes. So we were speaking last week. We did a CenterStage live chat with the CenterStage team, and obviously, John was letting us know that in Asia, there's actually there's a camp for kids. Like they start as little kids learning how to voice act. It's a huge thing, and now in America is when it's coming out more voice acting, because now everybody's I think it's after like the whole Kanye West said like, yeah, I like anime. Everybody's like, what? And now everybody's into anime, which is so silly because you had us when we were like teenagers and stuff that liked anime, and it wasn't as cool as it is now. But but
we weren't Kanye West.
Yeah, we weren't Kanye.
But we could be.
We could. We definitely could. But
actually, I couldn't be Kanye.
I know a couple of his songs, so maybe I can try, but it would be very bad. So I feel like now it's coming out more in the US. It's becoming such a big thing to be a voice actor. Like now I see like it's on a rise, definitely. But in Asia, they do it since they're kids. And I was actually today also watching this Japanese voice actor talking about how he got into voice acting, and they all said the same thing. My sister was a voice actor, so I kept going, and then I did it since I was like 5 years old, and I'm like, wow, this is so cool. Because I feel like most of the times adults do like the little kid voices sometimes. Like I don't see a lot of kid voice actors here, but I'm seeing them now slowly and surely come in. Like Josh Hutcherson, when he was a kid, he did a role for Howl's Moving Castle. His little assistant, that was Josh Hutcherson. I remember that one. I think Christian Bale was in that one too, yeah. And
Cool.
it was a, you know, Howl's Moving Castle, right? Yeah.
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah, that was like.
Who do you take me for? You think I'm an
just
imposter
asking.
here?
I'm
You think
just
I don't know my anime?
So I think that was such a cool show. I mean, that was such a cool movie, and it. I feel like that's honestly like, it'd be so cool to see more little kids start doing voice acting and starting from a young age, because I feel like this has kind of been for like older crowds until recently. Now everybody's getting into it, and it's such a great thing. Let me go ahead and jump back into some questions. We have a few.
Wait, one thing just came to mind.
Yes.
Oh my god, I gotta say, okay, I can't believe I forgot this. Something I would want to play, my dream role. So even though Sailor Moon got me into anime, or got me into doing voice acting, the reason why I decided to was because I love Star Wars so much. So like Star Wars Clone Wars, Star Wars Rebels, that being a character, being anything in those shows, that would be my dream role. Because like, oh my, I'm such a Star Wars nerd. Like I GM games and stuff like that. We do like, you know, like D&D, Star Wars D&D and stuff like that. Do that weekly pretty much. I love it.
Awesome.
I love it so much. So yeah, that would be my dream role. Mm-hmm.
Hopefully, you know, they're doing so many different types of Star Wars, and Netflix is taking into that. So maybe we'll see you at some point in the future in a Star Wars animated show. Huh. I hope so. I
The
hope to see
dream.
you.
The dream is real.
It'll happen. It'll happen. Believe in the me that believes in you. So let's continue forward.
Awesome.
All right. Anthony asks, what do you prefer, narration or voicing characters?
Voicing characters for sure.
Yeah.
Narration, I don't have any experience actually doing narration. I've taken some courses on it. I find it very challenging. Like specifically, like I'm thinking like narration for like audiobooks. People that are really good at audiobooks, you know, they can just grind through stuff really quickly. But yeah, you know, I the reason I like character voices is that you can show a lot of variety as a character voice, whereas a narrator, it tends to be a more consistent tone. And that's not a bad thing. It's just I like to be all over the place because my natural voice is all over the place, sort of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I definitely get you on that. Narration, I think there's a line between narrators and like voice actors sometimes. I think about it because I remember I did one once and I almost fell asleep halfway through it because it was just it's grinding through like chapters.
And it's hard. Yeah, it's
oh
hard.
yeah, because you can't your voice, like you said, your voice has to stay at a certain like pace. Like you can't start a sentence like this and then go like this. So it's a very I mean, I give it to all those who narrate and do that other than voice acting. I think any type of actor is working hard, man.
Totally.
So let's keep on going.
Yeah, because I think as a
saying?
narrator, right, the words tell the story, not the voice.
Right.
And as an actor, the voice tells the story more than the words. And I think it's about like that skill set, right, to be able to just grind through text at that sort of level. Like, for example, narration definitely wouldn't be my strong suit.
Imagine
do
doing
anything.
Game of Thrones books. Have you read them? Ooh, I tried to read them and it was so hard to get through. Like I feel like 2 pages were just about like a glass of water, and I'm like, oh my god. So I can imagine like someone narrating. Someone did. There's audiobooks out, so I give it up to them because that's a hard thing to do. So definitely, just like voice acting isn't for everybody, narrating isn't for everybody, live acting isn't for everybody, but there's all types of different actors, so it's pretty cool.
But it's all awesome.
Yeah, it is. It's so all awesome. Love it. And then let's go to Smorgy Guy. He asked, did you have any role models that you looked toward while trying to become a voice actor? So we know that you talked about Sailor Moon, but what are other role models that you might have had?
Yeah, so I don't really have any specific actor that I really aspire to, other than people that I've worked with in studio that are just more experienced than me, that I'll be like, oh wow, I can learn something from this person. But I think in general, like characters, you know, like I think back about the dubs that I like for example, Dragon Ball Z. I love the Dragon Ball Z dub. What did I love about that? Well, I love Vegeta because Vegeta is awesome.
Yeah.
I love Piccolo because Piccolo is awesome, and I know it's the same voice actor. But I love Gohan. I love all these different characters, and so yeah, to me, it's really not. I really don't look at the actors more so as I look at this character that was done. Actually, a really good actor that I looked up recently, and this was her first gig, but to me, did a really amazing performance. Was for the video game Senua's Sacrifice,
Uh-huh.
and it's basically it's a third-person sort of choppy game where you play a character that has psychosis, and so this voice actress, and this is our first big role. First, she was actually doing the physical acting because it was like motion capture, which is really cool.
Oh, I love
But
those.
she basically, yeah, so neat. She basically had to do like 6 different voices in her head. So it would be like you'd hear a voice like, Nathan, you can do this. And then another voice would be like, Nathan, give me a break. You're going to fail. And then another voice that was like, oh, Nathan, please don't do this.
Oh,
And like you have these 6 voices bouncing around, and man, it makes this powerful narrative effect.
mhm.
So yeah, like that's a character that I'm like, wow. If you haven't played Senua's Sacrifice, if you can get a demo of it, even just the opening scene where you're rafting it on this little, you're sitting on a little log, and like the dialogue that you hear, you're like, whoa, that's some very powerful voice acting.
Wow, I love it. I love now that video games are becoming like such a big thing in voice acting too, because now it's more cinematic. Yeah, video games used to be pretty much, like Super Mario, pow pow boom, and there's like some text that Bowser, stole the princess, whatever. Now there's like a whole, now video games are like a movie. Now, yeah, like The Last of Us, that came out in on E3, that they're doing Last of Us, the other installment. It's so crazy how wonderful everything
Yeah.
looks, and how the voice actors are having to act out their characters too. They're doing that same thing, um it's just, it's crazy. It's mind-boggling to me sometimes how far, we've gotten in technology, and how much like video games have changed from just simple like fighting games or like shooting games to just like real hardcore like plot heavy stories at all times. And I think that's
Yeah.
really cool. And
Yeah.
talking about another dub that was really good, I loved Inuyasha. Oh my god, Inuyasha was my jam. And I think that they were really good, even though you heard Moneka's story, which was the voice actress for Kagome. Even though you heard her say Inuyasha like 10 times in each episode, it was still a very good dub. It was. I really liked it. I thought it was a good one. And
So of interest, actually, the voice director of Inuyasha is one of the directors I work with a lot.
nice.
And he's actually one of the persons who I did the courses with, and yeah. Inuyasha's funny because I have a really close friend who's a big Inuyasha fangirl,
Uh-huh.
and I constantly get every chance I can to make fun of her. So I was talking to him and like the director, and I'm like, okay, if you ever do a Inuyasha dub, can you please like just cast me as like a background character so I can go to this girl and be like, I'm an Inuyasha voice actor, haha.
Wow, that's too good. That's so crazy. What a small world. That's awesome. It's awesome they
Yeah.
get to work with.
He's a really good director, yeah.
Yeah, I bet. Let's keep going. We have 2 more little questions here. And I'm sorry, I'm getting congested as we talk. I don't know what's going on. So, New 16 asks, what is the hardest element that you've encountered with voiceover? That's a good one.
Yeah, so that's actually, and it's very, oh my god, I could give you 5,000 hard elements, man. So I can tell you, like, I'll tell you my 2 personal weaknesses that I've struggled to overcome as a voice actor, and it's taken me a lot of time. Actually, I'll give you 3. I'll
Okay.
give you 3.
All right.
I'll give you 20.
Oh,
I'll give you my
shoot
entire
for it,
life
shoot
from
for
day 1.
it.
So number 1 is hearing. Having a director say to you, hey, you're doing this, and for me to actually not be able to hear what they're saying, like I can hear them and I understand their words, but I literally cannot hear what is happening in my voice.
Right.
if you don't have enough practice with your voice, you don't hear yourself, right? And like you can't tell how you are sounding, and it takes a long time to realize what your patterns are. Like I've heard lots of people that when they're acting, like listen to your auditions and what you do, and ask yourself, does every sentence end the same way?
Right.
Do I always go down? Every sentence, do I go down or do I go up? See, I went down again on there, for example. And like those hearing that stuff, that's tough for me. So that's something that I've finally, like, I have all these realizations as I'm doing voiceover, like, oh my God, I was doing this. So every day is a new adventure. So that's one.
That's
Number two, yeah, that's one. Don't take this away from me, Annie. Number two was when I first did voiceover, and if you hear my initial work as Anishi, I'll do an impersonation. Hi, my name is Anishi. How are you doing today? So that's a more extreme version. But basically, my voice is rolling up, down, up, down. It's constantly rolling up and down like this. See how the tone is constantly going like that? That's how I sold character, was trying to sell the character. But it's much more effective just to hit a single word. Like, rather than say something like let's say I'm trying to be sort of malicious to someone, rather than say something like, how are you today? If you just say it more simply like, how are you today?
It's different.
It has more impact and more emphasis. It sounds more realistic. Sometimes less is more. So my voice going like rolly is the only way I can really explain it. But like my pitch going up, down, that was my natural wavelength pattern when I was trying to sort of be interesting. And then my third, and this is a challenge I always have, which is very interesting. So when you're doing dubs and stuff like that, or with any script, there's punctuation, because when people write, they write with punctuation. Yeah. Punctuation should not be trusted. Like it, my problem is, so I'm academically trained. Like I have a master's, a university master's, and so I did my BA in philosophy, I did my master's in public policy. So I'm pretty educated, and you know, when you get to that level of education, they train you to read a very specific way and interpret punctuation a very specific way, and we all do it, right? And so someone will give me a script, and if they say, like, if it's like, hey, comma, how are you doing? I'll always be like, hey, how are you doing?
Yeah.
And even if my director's like, hey, no pause there, I'm like, okay, hey, how are you doing? And he's like, take out the pause, and I'm like, there's no pause. Hey, how are you doing? I couldn't hear. I was like, but there's a comma there, man. I can't ignore the comma. The rules say I can't. So that's a big challenge for me. And I think we all naturally do it. When you read a script, you'll read it with the punctuation. But as an actor, especially if you're doing something like prelay, don't worry about the punctuation. You know the character. Just go with the flow.
Right.
Yeah. And I think the interesting thing too is sometimes, like, when you read a script and you see like punctuation, like, hey, what are you doing, that example, or how are you doing, you can almost like hit the punctuation by emphasizing the words differently. So rather than like, hey, how are you doing, you can be like, hey, how are you doing?
I see.
See how I added a pause there, sort of a little break with the energy and how I did the read, and it still feels like a comma even though it becomes a more realistic flow.
Right.
So yeah, that's another challenge for me. So there you go, 3.
Awesome.
I could go to like 5,000, but I guess there's a time limit.
No, it's totally fine. If you want to keep talking, we'll talk. But I mean, I definitely feel like those weaknesses are so difficult. And like, not only that, I mean, I've had to voice act in like a box, like a little box, and I had to be crazy. And I remember I'm like, how can I be crazy if I can't like stretch my arm? And it's so difficult because sometimes you have to do things in a sort of atmosphere that you can't really go crazy all of a sudden about, and you have to still sort of vocalize that craziness. So it's so cool how we're able to move into that and to create this character in whatever, you know, situation we might be in. And the weaknesses that you have are really good ones for everybody hearing, you know. take notes of everything that Nathan's telling you. This is gold, guys. This is gold what you're hearing right now. So let's go on to our
My weaknesses are gold.
No,
Yes.
they help out.
Yes, gold
No.
weaknesses.
Don't take this away from me, Nathan. Let's go to the last question. So the last question is from Quinny again. She said, if you couldn't be a voiceover or a voice actor, what would be another career you'd like to do?
Oh man, that is tough. So basically I teach Muay Thai part-time. I do a few things. I'm a business analyst by trade, if you know what that is, and I'm a voice actor. So I'm all over the place. You know, it'd be really cool to be a board game developer, as weird as that sounds, but I love board games. And like being a professional board game developer, I don't think that exists. Well, I mean, I know it exists, but I think you do more than like actually just design them. There'd be more to it than just like making the fun games. But that's something that might be fun to do. So let's say I took my part-time voiceover gig out of there. Yeah, I could completely sub it out with that part-time thing, make it. But for a full-time career, I think one of my problems, maybe not one of my problems, one of my just realities, is that I like doing some of this and some of that and some of this. Like, I don't want to specialize completely in one area. I like to be a very well-rounded individual from what I determine well-rounded is. So yeah, that being said, voiceover, if I could do it full-time or opportunities came up to make it full-time and it was in character work, stuff I'm very passionate about, 100% I would do that full-time. Because that is my true passion. But there's also some academic interests I have on the side, like public policy interests. I know, who would have expected that I'd mention public policy? I'm an old man, okay?
It doesn't matter. I think I think the coolest thing is to be well-rounded. Let me tell you, I've interviewed quite a few people already, and they all say the same thing like that. They all just love to do different things. They can't just pick one thing and just do it. And I think that really like goes to show you what type like actors are, that we just have so many different things that we want to do and we want to experience at the same time. And I think everything that we do helps us to a certain extent. I mean, you're a business analyst by trade, and you do what was it, politics, public policy, yeah, and
public policy.
Yeah. So like, I mean, like, imagine that you get, I don't know, a character that's a businessman. You got that already. You can definitely do that businessman character.
This is
guess
my
what?
life.
That's
Business Muay Thai character.
Yeah, you know, like a Muay Thai instructor character. Psh, step aside, people. I am an instructor. You know, like everything that goes on in our life, that kind of helps us shoot towards different roles and be able to just do what we thought we couldn't do, or voice a role we thought maybe we wouldn't be able to voice beforehand, but now we can because we got this like crazy experience that one time in like June when I was a business analyst for like a day. I don't know, you know, all these experiences really help us.
That
it's
one
really
day.
Cool. Yeah, that
analyzing
one day.
the business.
But,
I think one thing that I will say regarding a career is that whatever I do, and this, so you touched upon this, Yenni, and it made me think of it, is whatever I do, I need to have creativity in my life. And even as a business analyst, you guys are going to Google, what's a business analyst? It's a very technical position. But even in that, everything I do, I find a way to be creative. I will never give up my creativity. And that's what keeps me going. Like, even if I'm writing a report, I'll find a creative angle to make it more accessible, because everything to me, you know, presenting a business findings to me is a performance.
right.
You know, anyhow,
It
creativity is very, very important.
Yeah, I think
Embrace it.
it's used anywhere. It's used anywhere, and I think the people who succeed in life are those who realize that creativity is the way to go. Because boring is boring. You can't. I mean, my day job is working at the port of Miami. I work with vessels and cruise ships all day, and I do the administrative side of it, and I have to make it creative, because if not, I mean, like, it's just wasting away 9 to 5. you know, and again, that helps us with everything that we do in voice acting then. Whatever it might be. If I have to be a captain, I'm going to be the best captain because I know what it is to be a captain. Well, not really, but I've seen people. I've seen captains. I've met them. But you know, like
I've seen captains. A method actor.
Yeah, it's sort of, I feel like sometimes voice acting could be method acting to a certain extent. Like you mentioned earlier in the interview, like when you got to be a sad character and your body goes limp a little, you start like kind of thinking about things that make you sad to help you get into character. It's method acting.
Totally.
That's like the basics of method acting. So it's really cool. Anyways, it's 10:50 in my time, 9:50 in another person's time, 8:50 in another person's time. We're gonna go ahead and we're gonna close this off. And real quick, Nathan, thank you so much. You are such an amazing person and a very talented individual. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here with me.
Thank you for being my biggest fan.
I got you. Thank you for letting everybody ask questions and you answering them. It was so great to have you here. You're marvelous, and I wish you the best. Me and the CenterStage team wish you the best in all your future endeavors. And I will give you the stage to say your final goodbyes to everybody listening.
Sweet. Well, yeah, no, it was sincerely a lot of fun. I really enjoyed doing the reads. And yeah, if you ever you won't want to do reads like this again for whatever reason, yeah, feel free to invite me. I will be down because
Awesome.
practice makes perfect. And yeah, I'm really impressed by everybody's passion in the reads there. There was some really good professional stuff, like, making mistakes and not worrying about it, keep on grinding through or resetting. That's how you do it. Gotta be professional. So yeah, no, I'm really stoked. This was truly a lot of fun, and hopefully my advice is useful to you. And feel free, if you have any other questions, you can just message me on here. I'm all good with that.
Awesome.
My life is an open book.
And we leave it like that. Nathan Hunt's life, the open book.
The open book.
Thank you everybody so much who's listening
Nice.
on our Twitch. Thank you for everybody who asked questions. Thank you for everybody who script read with Nathan. We both wish you a very, very good night. Have a wonderful next day. Have a wonderful next week. Have a wonderful next month. See you later, guys.